I planted a cursed object in a church to destroy it from within. But what happened next changed everything about what I thought I knew about God, darkness, and my own soul. My name is Rebecca, and for 7 years, I was a practicing witch. Not the Hollywood kind with pointed hats and broomsticks. I'm talking about real witchcraft blood rituals, spirit invocations, curse work that could shatter a person's life like glass. I worked as a trauma nurse in Chicago, dealing with death and suffering every single shift. And somewhere between the gunshot wounds and the pediatric cancer cases, I stopped believing in a God who cared. If he existed at all, he was either powerless or cruel. So I turned to something else. Something that promised me control in a world of chaos. It started innocently enough. A co-worker introduced me to Wicca, telling me it was just about connecting with nature and feminine energy. Within 6 months, I'd moved far beyond that. I found a coven on the north side, 13 women who practiced what they called the old ways. We weren't playing with crystals and sage bundles. We were working with entities that had names, personalities, and demands. Entities that required offerings, sometimes blood, sometimes more. I remember my initiation ceremony like it was yesterday. We gathered in a basement lit only by black candles, their flames casting shadows that seemed to move independently of the light. The high priestess, a woman named Morgana who'd been practicing for 30 years, cut a sigil into my left palm with a consecrated blade. As my blood dripped into a silver chalice, I felt something enter me. It was like a door opening in my chest and something cold and ancient walking through. The other women chanted in a language I didn't recognize, but somehow understood. And when it was over, I could feel things I'd never felt before. I could sense the spiritual atmosphere of a room when I walked in. I could tell when someone was lying, could feel their fears like they were tangible objects floating in the air around them. I felt powerful. I felt seen. I felt like I'd finally found something real. For years, that power sustained me. I learned to cast circles, to invoke protective spirits, to craft spells that actually worked. I once cursed a doctor who'd sexually harassed 3 nurses on our floor. Within 2 weeks, he was under investigation, his career destroyed, his marriage falling apart. I felt no remorse. I felt like an agent of cosmic justice, balancing the scales that God, if he existed, refused to balance himself. But there was a price. There's always a price. The entities I worked with demanded more and more of me. My dreams became nightmares, visions of places I'd never been, of suffering that wasn't mine, but that I felt in every nerve. I started seeing shadows in my peripheral vision, figures that vanished when I turned to look directly at them. My coven mates assured me this was normal, that I was becoming more spiritually sensitive, more open to the other side. But deep down, in a place I refused to acknowledge, I knew something was feeding on me. Slowly, deliberately. And then I met Pastor David. He came into the ER one night with his teenage daughter who'd been in a car accident. While we worked on her broken ribs, collapsed lung, touch and go for hours, he stood in the corner of the trauma bay and prayed. Not quietly, not timidly. He prayed with authority, declaring healing over her, thanking God for her recovery before we'd even stabilized her vitals. It enraged me. The audacity of his faith, the presumption that his God was listening, that his God cared. Where was this God when I was 12 and my stepfather was beating me unconscious? Where was he when my little brother died of leukemia at 8 years old, his body wasting away despite every prayer my mother sobbed into the night? His daughter survived. Against all odds, she walked out of that hospital 3 weeks later with minimal long-term damage. And Pastor David had the nerve to come back, to find me, to thank me, and tell me that God had used my hands to save her life. I wanted to spit in his face. Instead, I smiled and accepted his gratitude, and I began to plan. I learned he pastored a small charismatic church on the south side, one of those places where people raised their hands during worship and claimed to hear God's voice. the kind of Christianity I despised most. Not the cultural Christmas and Easter type. These were true believers, dangerous in their conviction. And I decided they needed to understand what real spiritual power looked like. I spent 3 weeks crafting the object. It was a small wooden box, about the size of a deck of cards, carved from yew wood I'd harvested myself under a new moon. Inside, I placed specific items. A dead crow's foot, my own menstrual blood mixed with graveyard dirt, a piece of paper with the church's address written in my blood, and a sigil I'd received in a vision during meditation. A sigil that one of my guiding spirits, an entity that called itself Azrael, had shown me. The sigil of division, of spiritual blindness, of slow decay. I consecrated it during our monthly coven gathering. All 13 of us formed a circle around it, channeling energy into it for over an hour. I felt the temperature in the room drop 20 degrees. The candles flickered and nearly went out despite the absence of wind. And when I picked up the box afterward, it felt heavy. Not physically, it weighed maybe a few ounces. But spiritually, it felt like I was holding something dense, something with its own gravitational pull. Morgana looked at me with something like fear in her eyes. "This is strong work, Rebecca," she said. "Are you sure you want to release this?" I was sure. I was furious. I was convinced that this church, this pastor, these people and their naive faith needed to be exposed for the delusion it was. I wanted to watch them tear each other apart, to watch their faith crumble when their prayers went unanswered and their unity shattered. I visited the church on a Wednesday night when they held a prayer meeting. Only about 20 people were there, scattered in pews meant for 100. I wore normal clothes, smiled politely when the greeter welcomed me, and sat in the back row. The worship was exactly as I expected, emotional, hands raised, people swaying and singing about the love of God with tears streaming down their faces. It made my skin crawl. But I waited. After the service, while people were drinking coffee and chatting in the lobby, I slipped into the sanctuary alone. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from anticipation. I walked to the front, to the altar where they probably prayed over people, and I knelt as if I were praying. Instead, I pulled the box from my purse and wedged it under the altar, behind a decorative panel where no one would find it unless they were specifically looking. As I placed it, I whispered the activation words Azrael had taught me, words that tasted like copper on my tongue, that made my throat burn as I spoke them. And I felt it release. Like uncorking a bottle of something poisonous, something that had been compressed and concentrated and was now free to expand, to spread, to infect. I stood up, walked out calmly, smiled at the pastor's wife on my way to the parking lot, and drove home feeling victorious, feeling powerful, feeling like I'd struck a blow against the God who'd abandoned me. For 2 weeks, nothing happened to me. I checked the church's social media obsessively, looking for signs that the curse was working. And there were signs. The pastor posted a prayer request about spiritual warfare and unusual conflict among the leadership team. Someone commented about feeling oppressed during worship. It was working. I should have been thrilled. But I wasn't, because I was falling apart. It started with insomnia. I couldn't sleep more than an hour at a time before nightmares jolted me awake, visions of that box, of something dark and writhing inside it, of it opening and releasing shadows that had my face. Then came the physical symptoms: chest pain, heart palpitations, a feeling like I couldn't get enough air, like something was sitting on my chest every moment of every day. My coven mates tried cleansing rituals, protective spells, calling on our spirits to shield me. Nothing worked. If anything, it got worse. 3 weeks after I planted the box, I collapsed at work. Just fell to the floor in the middle of a shift, my heart racing at over 200 beats per minute, my vision tunneling to black. The last thing I remember thinking before I lost consciousness was, "This is it. The curse is killing me. What I unleashed is destroying me first." And then I died. I know how that sounds, But clinically, medically, by every definition we use in healthcare, I died. My heart stopped, my breathing ceased, and for 3 minutes and 47 seconds, I was gone. But I wasn't gone. I was somewhere else. The transition wasn't gradual. One moment I was on the floor of the ER, surrounded by the sounds of my co-workers shouting and running, the crash cart alarm blaring. The next moment, silence. Complete, absolute silence. And I was standing. Not in the hospital. I was in a space that had no walls, no floor, no ceiling, just endless gray mist in every direction. But I could feel ground beneath my feet, even though I couldn't see it. The air, if it was air, felt thick, oppressive, like breathing in humidity so dense it had weight. And I knew, with a certainty that bypassed logic and went straight to my soul, that I wasn't alone. Figures began to emerge from the mist. Shadowy, indistinct, but I recognized them. The entities I'd been working with for 7 years. The spirits I'd invoked, made offerings to, trusted with my spiritual development. But here, in this place, they didn't look beautiful or powerful or wise. They looked grotesque, twisted. Their faces, when I could make them out, were masks of hatred and hunger, and they were closing in on me. "You're ours," one of them said, not out loud. The words just appeared in my mind, bypassing my ears entirely. "You opened the door. You invited us in. You gave us permission. And now you're ours forever." Terror doesn't begin to describe what I felt. It was primal, cellular, the kind of fear that strips away every pretense and defense and leaves you raw and exposed. I tried to run, but there was nowhere to run to. The mist went on forever. The figures surrounded me, their presence pressing in, suffocating. I could feel their claim on me, not just emotional, but legal in some cosmic sense I'd never understood. I'd signed a contract written in blood and ritual and invocation, and they'd come to collect. And then light, not a gradual dawning, not a gentle glow, a sudden, searing, impossible brightness that cut through the gray mist like a knife through fog. The entities surrounding me shrieked, an actual sound this time, high-pitched and agonized, and recoiled, retreating back into the shadows from which they'd come. I threw my arm over my eyes, but the light penetrated even that, shining through my flesh like I was made of paper. And then I saw him, Jesus, standing in light so bright it should have destroyed me. And his first words were the last thing I expected to hear. Not in condemnation, not in anger. The voice that filled that infinite space carried warmth I had never known, a gentleness that shattered every expectation I had built around divine judgment. "I know why you came to that church." Those 7 words hit me like a wave. My entire body, or whatever remained of my consciousness in that place, trembled. He knew. Of course he knew. I had come with darkness in my heart, with that cursed object wrapped in ritual cloth, with intentions fueled by years of pain and rejection. I wanted to explain, to justify, to defend myself, but the presence surrounding me rendered speech impossible. All I could do was feel. And what I felt was not the wrath I deserved, but something far more terrifying in its unexpected nature. Love. Overwhelming, unrelenting, unearned love. The light intensified, and I saw myself through eyes that were not my own. I saw the young girl who had first sought power in witchcraft, not because she was evil, but because she was hurting. I saw the teenager who dove deeper into the occult, desperately searching for belonging after religious communities had labeled her as other. I saw the woman who walked into that church with a cursed object, driven not by pure malice, but by a wounded heart, screaming, "If you reject me, I reject you first." "Your actions were wrong," the voice continued, each word resonating through my entire being. "But your heart was never beyond my reach." I wanted to protest, wanted to list every dark ritual, every curse spoken, every boundary crossed in my pursuit of power. How could my heart matter when my hands had done such terrible things? Then he showed me something that broke me completely. I saw the spiritual realm overlaying that church sanctuary. I saw the cursed object I had hidden, pulsing with malevolent energy. I saw the spiritual darkness I had invited, shadows that had clung to the walls, to the pews, waiting to poison anyone who drew near. But I also saw something else. I saw light, brilliant, unyielding light that surrounded the church like a fortress. I saw the prayers of the elderly woman who arrived each morning at dawn, kneeling in the front row. I saw the intercession of the young mother who prayed for her community while her children slept. I saw the spiritual warfare being waged by believers who had no idea what lurked in their midst, but whose faith created a barrier that my darkness could not penetrate. The cursed object I thought held such power. In the presence of genuine faith, it was nothing more than a corrupted trinket, as ineffective as a candle trying to darken the sun. "Your witchcraft was real," he said, and the validation sent shockwaves through me. So many Christians had dismissed the spiritual realm I had operated in, calling it mere superstition or mental illness. But here was God himself acknowledging what I had done, what I had wielded. But you never understood what you were fighting against. Then came the revelation that shattered my entire worldview. You cursed my church, but you could not curse my people. You brought darkness, but you could not extinguish light. You exercised power, but you never possessed authority. The authority belongs to those who know my name, not as religious tradition, but as living relationship. I understood then. All those years in witchcraft, I had chased power because I felt powerless. I had sought control because my life felt chaotic. I had embraced darkness because I thought the light had rejected me. But the truth was far more devastating and liberating than I could have imagined. "The church institution hurt you," he continued, and I felt tears could spirits cry, streaming down my face. Religious people judged you. They labeled you, excluded you, treated you as though you were beyond redemption. They were wrong. Those 3 words, they were wrong, unlocked something deep within me. Every moment of rejection, every sideways glance in church hallways, every whispered comment about my strangeness that had driven me into the arms of witchcraft. He had seen it all, and he was declaring, with divine authority, that the judgment I had received was not his judgment. But, and here his voice took on a different quality, one that demanded I face uncomfortable truth. You allowed their rejection to birth pride in your heart. You decided that if you could not belong to the light, you would master the darkness. You chose power over surrender, control over trust, vengeance over forgiveness. Each word was a sword cutting through my defenses, exposing the hidden sins I had never named. It was not just about witchcraft. It was about pride, about unforgiveness, about the moment I had decided that I would rather reign in darkness than serve in humility. "Those were your sins," he said, "not your seeking, not your spiritual hunger, not your desire for something beyond the material world. Your hunger for the supernatural came from me. I placed it within you. But you fed that hunger with poison instead of bread." I saw my entire spiritual journey reframed in that moment. The deep longing I had felt for transcendence, for connection with something greater that was not evil. That was divine design. God had created me with a hunger for the spiritual realm. But in my pain and rejection, I had sought to fill that hunger at the wrong table. "You were looking for me," he said, and the tenderness in those words undid me completely. "You just did not know my name." The revelation crashed over me like baptismal waters. Every ritual, every spell, every moment spent seeking power in darkness, underneath it all was a soul crying out for the very God I thought had rejected me. I had been searching for him in all the wrong places, calling him by all the wrong names, reaching toward him with hands that grasped at shadows instead of light. And here he was, not condemning me for my search, but grieving that I had looked everywhere except directly at him. "Do you understand now?" he asked. "You are not defined by your witchcraft. You are not defined by your past. You are not defined by what religious people said about you or what darkness you embraced in your pain." I waited, trembling, for him to tell me who I was. "You are my daughter. You have always been my daughter, and I have been waiting for you to come home." The words detonated something in my chest. My daughter, not former witch, not reformed sinner, not damaged goods that I'll tolerate. Daughter. In that moment, I understood the depth of divine grace in a way that no theology book, no sermon, no religious instruction had ever conveyed. Grace was not God overlooking my sins. Grace was God seeing my sins fully, understanding the pain that drove me to them, acknowledging the spiritual hunger that led me astray, and still claiming me as his own. I do not know how to describe what happened next. Surrender seems too small a word. Transformation feels inadequate. Something in the core of my being broke open, and everything I had built in darkness came flooding out, every curse, every ritual, every ounce of pride and pain and power I had clutched so tightly. And in the space left behind, light rushed in. "Yes," he whispered, and I felt arms that were not physical holding me as I wept. "Let it go. Let it all go. You do not need it anymore. You never needed it." The cursed object I had placed in that church, I saw it again in the spiritual realm. But now, instead of pulsing with dark energy, it was dissolving. Not destroyed by divine wrath, but simply rendered powerless in the presence of surrendered love. The darkness I had infused into it had no authority once I withdrew my will from its purpose. It became what it always was. A piece of corrupted matter with no true power, an empty vessel that could only hold what I poured into it. And I was pouring nothing into it anymore. I was empty. But not in the way I had feared. Not hollow or broken or diminished. Empty like a vessel finally ready to be filled with the right substance. "Go back," he said, and I felt the infinite space beginning to shift. "Go back to the life I have given you. Leave the darkness behind. Walk in the light that has always been meant for you. And tell everyone who will listen, that no one is beyond my reach. No sin is greater than my grace. No past is more powerful than my love." I wanted to stay, in that place of perfect acceptance, perfect love, perfect belonging. I wanted to remain forever. But I felt myself being pulled back, drawn toward the material world I had left behind. "Will you still be there?" I asked, desperate, terrified of losing this connection. "When I go back, will I still feel you?" "I have always been there," he answered. "You will not lose me. You have only just found me." Then I was gasping, choking, my body convulsing on that bathroom floor. My friend was screaming, calling my name, shaking my shoulders. I opened my eyes to fluorescent lights and tile and the ordinary, mundane, beautiful material world. But everything had changed. I could still feel him. That presence, that love, that acceptance. It had not disappeared with the vision. It resided inside me now, a warmth in my chest that no amount of darkness could extinguish. My friend was crying, asking what happened, if I was okay, should she call an ambulance. I sat up slowly, my body feeling foreign and familiar all at once. "I met Jesus," I said, and the words felt strange in my mouth. I had spoken that name before, in curses, in mockery, in bitterness, but now it tasted like honey, like home. I met Jesus, and he called me his daughter. The next days and weeks were chaos. Beautiful, terrifying, necessary chaos. I went back to my apartment and gathered every occult item I owned. Books, crystals, ritual tools, altar pieces, items I had spent years collecting, some of them expensive, all of them infused with spiritual significance. I built a fire in a safe place and burned them, not out of fear, but out of freedom. I did not need them anymore. I called the coven leader and told her I was done. She laughed at first, thinking it was a phase. When she realized I was serious, the laughter turned to threats, then to pleading, then to anger. I listened with compassion, but stood firm. Whatever power she thought she held over me had been broken by a greater authority. I found a church, not the one I had tried to curse. The shame was too fresh for that, but a small community that prioritized relationship over religion. When I told them my story, expecting judgment or fear, I found acceptance. Not naive acceptance that ignored my past, but grace-filled acceptance that acknowledged where I had been and celebrated where I was going. The spiritual healing was not instant. I still struggled with pride, with the desire for control, with the habits of thought that witchcraft had ingrained in me. But now I had a different source to draw from. When I felt powerless, instead of grasping for control through spells, I learned to surrender to a God who held all power. When I felt rejected, instead of building walls of darkness, I ran toward the light that had claimed me as daughter. The cursed object I had left in that church, I never retrieved it. I heard later that during a renovation, they found a strange item hidden in the sanctuary and threw it away, assuming it was trash. Perhaps it was. Perhaps in the presence of genuine faith, that is all it ever was. But here is what I need you to understand. This testimony is not just about witchcraft and divine encounters and dramatic transformations. This is about the nature of God Himself. I spent years believing that God saw me as my sins, that my identity was witch or sinner or rejected. I thought that if He looked at me at all, it was with disgust or anger or at best disappointed tolerance. But what I discovered in that encounter shattered every religious framework I had built. God did not see me as my sins. He saw my sins, acknowledged them fully, did not dismiss or minimize them, but He looked past my actions to my heart. And what He saw there was not an evil person doing evil things. He saw a hurting daughter searching for her father in all the wrong places. He focused on my attitudes, my pride, yes, my unforgiveness, absolutely, my spiritual hunger that I had fed with poison instead of bread. But He addressed those heart issues not with condemnation, but with truth spoken in love. He showed me what was wrong so He could heal it, not to shame me, but to set me free. This is what religious tradition often misses. We focus on behavior modification, on sin management, on keeping lists of do's and do-nots. But God operates at a deeper level. He cares about the attitudes that drive our actions, the wounds that fuel our rebellion, the hunger that leads us astray. You can attend church every week and still have a heart full of pride and judgment. You can avoid every sin on the religious checklist and still be far from God. Because what He wants is not religious performance. He wants relationship. He wants surrender. He wants us to bring our whole selves broken, searching, hungry into His presence and let Him redefine who we are. I was a witch who cursed a church. By every religious standard, I should have been beyond redemption. But God met me in my darkness with such overwhelming grace that my entire identity shifted. Not because I cleaned myself up first, not because I earned my way back, but because His love is more powerful than any darkness we can embrace, and His desire for relationship with us transcends our worst choices. If you are listening to this and you feel like you have gone too far, done too much, crossed too many lines, hear me clearly. You have not. If God could meet a witch who actively cursed His church with such tender love, if He could look past my years of occult practice and see a daughter searching for her father, if He could transform my darkest intentions into a testimony of grace, then no one is beyond His reach. Your past does not disqualify you. Your sins do not define you. Your spiritual hunger, even if you have fed it with poison, comes from Him. He placed that longing for the supernatural, for transcendence, for something beyond this material world inside you. And He is waiting for you to direct that hunger toward its true source. You do not need to clean yourself up first. You do not need to have all the right theology or say all the right words. You do not need permission from religious gatekeepers or approval from church institutions. You just need to be willing to encounter him as you are, broken, searching, hungry, desperate. He meets us in that place, and when he does, everything changes. I am still learning, still healing, still discovering what it means to walk in light after so many years in darkness. But I am fundamentally different than I was. Not because I try harder or follow more rules or perform better religion. I am different because I met love himself and he told me who I really am. If you are ready for that encounter, if you are tired of searching in the wrong places, if you are hungry for something real beyond religious performance or spiritual counterfeits, just ask. Just open yourself to the possibility that the God you think has rejected you has actually been pursuing you all along. He is not afraid of your darkness. He is not intimidated by your past. He is not waiting for you to be worthy. He is simply waiting for you to come home. And when you do, you will discover what I discovered, that grace is not God overlooking our sins, but God transforming us in spite of them. That love is not conditional acceptance, but unconditional pursuit. That divine encounters are not reserved for the religiously qualified, but for the spiritually hungry. You were made for more than darkness. You were made for more than empty power. You were made for relationship with the one who created your hunger for the supernatural in the first place. And he is calling you by name, not as your sins, not as your past, not as what others have labeled you. He is calling you as his beloved, his daughter, his son, his own. Will you answer?